Well, much as the SAMI DRC left Eastern DRC and hauled the entire equipment through Rwanda to Tanzania and then flew back to their country, it is important to note that there are some SAMI DRC troops still left in Eastern DRC. There are some important equipment also that belonged to SAMI DRC and others belong to MONUSCO that are owned by the South African National Defense Forces that are still left in Eastern DRC. And particularly, there is a helicopter that was shot 40 times that is still left in Goma. Well, I'm going to tell you about that particular helicopter. What is the number of the SAMI DRC troops that are still left in Eastern DRC? What does the Department of Defense of South Africa say about the helicopters that are left in Eastern DRC, and particularly this helicopter that was shot 40 times and is still in Goma that is controlled by the M23? Well, this is Bonafide. If you haven't subscribed, kindly subscribe and hit the notification button so that when I release something new on Eastern DRC, you get notified as soon as possible. Well, 5 of the South Africa Air Force most valued helicopters, Orics, are still in Eastern DRC. 4 Orics are in Lubumbashi, while a 5th remains at Goma Airport under the M23 control after it was hit by rebel fire. This helicopter was hit 40 times while it was carrying out a medical evacuation, resulting in injury to the commander as well as the medic in the cabin. The Orics was badly damaged, with multiple rounds going through the cabin, cockpit, and main rotor blades and causing damage to the hydraulic system. Now, this particular incident forced the aircraft to land at Goma International Airport. Now, it is important to note that among these 5 Oryx helicopters that belong to the South African National Defense Forces, 3 of them are used under MONUSCO, the UN mission in Eastern DRC that South Africa is also participating in. But 2 of these helicopters were used by the SAMI DRC mission in Eastern DRC that was since cancelled on March, and they are still in Eastern DRC. These 2 that were used under SAMI DRC are based at Lubumbashi. Well, all of these helicopters are not in good condition, and that is why they have not been repatriated back to South Africa. In fact, the Department of Defense of South Africa's spokesperson, Sifiwe Dlamini, said that all the South African Air Force helicopters in DRC are being guarded and protected from the elements as best as possible. And this now takes us to the one that is embedded in Goma, the one that was shot 40 times and had to land at Goma International Airport. Remember, just a few months ago, there was that agreement between the South African National Defense Forces and the M23. This is after the M23 took over the entire Goma. And there was that pact that the South African National Defense Forces will go to the Goma airport and renovate the airport so that they can transport their equipment and troops from the Goma International Airport. But that decision was rejected by the DRC government, saying that a collaboration between the South African National Defense Forces and the M23 will be enabling the M23, and that is something that the Kinshasa government did not want, and therefore Goma International Airport was not rehabilitated. So this helicopter that belonged to the South African National Defense Forces under MONUSCO that had to land at Goma International Airport is still at Goma International Airport even right now, as the M23 has taken over Goma and is controlling all the affairs of Goma. Now, the Department of Defense of South Africa say that there are people who are allocated. Of course, these are troops who are allocated in Goma so that they can protect this helicopter from the M23 taking anything from that helicopter or from other elements accessing this helicopter. The South Africa Ministry of Defense has also said that the party that will repatriate that helicopter that is in Goma will be the United Nations. Well, there are a few SAMI DRC troops that are still in Eastern DRC, specifically in Lubumbashi, and the Ministry of Defense of South Africa says that the ones who are deployed are getting a decent salary and deployment allowance, but they don't have clarity of how long they will be there, and this is causing a strain on them and their families. In fact, there are 375 South African National Defense Forces soldiers that remain deployed in Lubumbashi, and another 350 that are stationed at Kinshasa to facilitate the withdrawal of equipment contributed under the SAMI DRC that was terminated in March. Although there were equipment that were moved through road via Rwanda all the way to Tanzania, and they were flown from Tanzania to their respective countries, there are still some equipments and logistics that have to be conducted inside DRC. And there are hundreds of troops, both in Kinshasa and Lubumbashi, continuing to facilitate this, as well as there are troops that are still guarding these helicopters that have broken down in Eastern DRC and the one that was shot down by the M23. Well, I will continue to keep you informed of the latest of what will come out from Eastern DRC. Keep it Bonafide.